what is a public-private partnership? But for us, what it means is a long-term contract where you have a single private contractor that's not only designing and building something, but they're often financing, operating, and maintaining it. And the reason that you might want to use a P3 model is that it tends to allocate risk a little bit better, gives these companies more flexibility to come up with innovative solutions that really think through the whole life cycle of a project, and therefore find some efficiencies, get some better quality outcomes, and probably most importantly, maintain these assets to a much better quality than they normally would when government's just kind of doing these services itself. Yeah, there certainly can be some challenges for governments to adopting the P3 model. What we often find, as I was saying earlier, is that they don't necessarily have the internal expertise. That can be a challenge. It also requires kind of a new way of thinking in terms of thinking about a 30, 50-year term of a project. And so you can imagine in predicting the future in any scenario, let alone infrastructure and things related to policy and politics, that can be a major undertaking of, how do we plan for the risks of, I don't know, a pandemic or, massive changes in how we travel, new technologies. That's in theory one of the benefits of a P3, but to do it properly, you need to have a fairly good assessment of what the likely scenarios are. And so we help them do that and think through those issues. But that not only requires convincing of, the day-to-day staff that work on these projects in government, but also the elected officials that are going to have to be responsible and answer to the constituents when they enter into a long-term contract. And so that's one area where we have a major work to go, is to sort of help explain what the benefit of the P3 model is, how it can be useful, how it can impact and improve people's lives. What we've often found is before you get anywhere near an actual procurement or delivering on a project through a P3 model, you need to walk through those steps of what are the technical, financial, legal ramifications of doing a project using these kinds of delivery models. And that it often involves, walking through the financial value for money analysis of how much is this project going to cost? Would it be possible if you're not using a P3 model? And what are the long-term costs going to be compared to if you did it traditional ways? And that's a trade-off that governments and elected officials and ultimately citizens have to make for themselves is, what is that, balancing of options. But it's absolutely a worthwhile exercise. And sometimes it's going to lead to decisions not to do a P3, and that's just fine. That's probably the right way it should work, because P3 is not going to work for every single project they look at. There's probably an equal number on both sides in terms of both the successful elements as well as the downfalls. I would say doing that early upfront assessment of, is this an appropriate project for a P3 model is really critical. As I said earlier, it's technical, financial, political, all types of different due diligence that needs to occur. That's really one of the most fundamental things that needs to happen. And in that assessment, I think what's most critical to having a successful P3 project is going through the key risks that are, facing a project. What's been preventing that project from being delivered to date? If it's just funding, the P3 probably is not going to, be the best solution to solve that. But if it's these other higher level risks that are also adding costs and time and challenges, then it can really be appropriate. The downside, the reasons why P3s often don't succeed or hit stumbling blocks is that folks didn't fully appreciate why they were doing a P3 and what the benefit might be. They had unreasonable expectations that it was just going to be free money or pay for itself, and that rarely is ever the case. You may be able to find some potential value capture and benefits from certain types of infrastructure projects, but more often than not, it's still the government paying for it in the long run, and ultimately owning it as well. And so, unrealistic expectations, thinking you're going to deliver it, much faster or much more cheaply in the long run, that may not be the case. And so, dispelling those myths and making sure people have reasonable understandings of what's going to be required and what key decisions are going to have to be made and when, are really critical to making sure it's a successful P3.